Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. I'm Joe Samaniego. With me, Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight. Been up almost all night. I know your colleague Joshua Birch has been up all night because the 24 Hours Le Mans is in the books. We'll start off with that, but before we get into the racing recaps, a big thank you to our Patreon investors calling the show: Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Robin upped her membership, contributing another $5 per month, investing into the Grid Network more. Thank you so much, Robin, for doing that. And we encourage everyone invest in the Grid Network. Help us grow. You can also do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube Super Chat. And of course, you could do a Super Chat and buy a cup of coffee or a Super Chat to a particular member of the Grid Network team. Just put their name and we'll forward to them the cup of coffee they deserve. And of course, link to the video description for everyone's channel. Hit the bell icon, subscribe. Don't miss any of our programs. Encourage everyone, especially consider Kobe and Joshua, some coffee. Kobe, you've been up just about all night recapping, watching the Le Mans 24 hours. Let's start with the Le Mans 24 hours.
Yeah, Joe's the granddaddy of them all in the sports car racing world. One of the biggest crown jewel races in the world just concluded the 92nd run out of the 24 Hours of Le Mans at Circuit de la Sarthe. Joe, this race is always a must-watch each year, and this year's edition gave us plenty of storylines to follow. A 62-car field, 23 cars in the fight for the overall win in the Hypercar class, and rain to shake things up, testing these drivers' abilities and car control. Early in the race, all three Ferraris were very strong. Then they faded for a bit as the Toyotas and Porsche took control. However, Ferrari cycled back to the front and ended up taking control of this race during the final hours to win back-to-back years in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Last year was the number 51 Ferrari, but this time around it was the number 50, of course, a Ferrari 499P's turn with Nicholas Nielsen, Antonio Fuoco, and Miguel Molina. It wasn't easy, though, because the number 50 Ferrari had an issue with the door not shutting in the closing hours, and Nielsen had to really save during the final stint, who took the checker flag with only 2% of energy remaining. That may sound familiar to all you Formula E fans because it's almost like the ending of a Formula E race where they're running very low on battery power. Ferrari held off the number 7 Toyota Gazoo Racing GR010 Hybrid and the sister car, the number 51 Prancing Horse, to round out the podium. Joe, how impressed are you with Ferrari winning consecutive years and Nicholas Nielsen's ability to save during that final stint?
Nicholas Nielsen's effort in that final stint, this is the kind of stuff that makes almost like sort of like a movie storybook at the end. You're so close to the win, but you have to be saving energy. And we were all on the edge of our seats, just wondering how accurate was that? Does he really have 2%? Will it come to us slow? The Toyotas, they're coming. So much on the air, and for everyone to watch it, I think this was just another example up there with the Indianapolis 500, the emotions of getting this win. As soon as he crossed the line, he was tearing up. His teammates, they were in the garage with hands up to their faces, just nervous, stressed out, just thinking, can we get this done? And they did. What a race by them. What an effort. While the 51 team has some issues, the 50 team, near flawless race, near flawless, the door issue. But Nicholas, wow. I just think this was just a very great effort by the entire team, show what they're capable of. They don't exactly, especially for the casual race fan that is more familiar with the 51 getting the win last year, Antonio Giovinazzi. This team, these drivers, now they're the center of attention. I think this is just great for them. It's great for the sport in general and overall. Kobe, I just thought this was some of the best 24-hour closing moments where we knew there was a lot going on, but we saw a great amount of racing, and I'm just thrilled that they got to win. For the Ferrari fans, 2 in a row, they have to feel really good about that. They are just got to feel we got the last 24 hours of Le Mans. Let's go for that third one next year. What a great storybook.
Yeah, for sure. I thought Ferrari had a very impressive race, and it's funny because leading up to this, a lot of people, including us on Grid Tonight, we were saying that the Toyotas and the Porsches looked to be the favorite. And to be fair, they did look strong, during the latter part of the first half of the race and during the middle parts. But Ferrari, they were strong at the beginning and the end when it truly mattered the most. I thought this was quite a drive by those three winning drivers, Nicholas Nielsen, Antonio Fuaco, and Miguel Molina, especially Nicholas Nielsen. During that last stint, all of us were on the edge of our seats at the end of that race, wondering, is he going to have enough to make it to the start-finish line? If Nicholas Nielsen had to go one more lap around Circuit de la Sarthe, it probably would have been game over for him. Like, can you imagine you only have 2% of energy remaining? That would not have been good, because Jose Maria Lopez in that number 7 Toyota, he was coming in a hurry. If something would have happened to Nielsen, he would have been there ready to pass him. Joe, you mentioned the emotions of winning Le Mans. We saw Nicholas Nielsen with tears in his eyes inside the car. You saw his teammates Miguel Molina, Antonio Fuaco as well. They were very emotional. The entire Ferrari garage, there was nothing but tears flowing and joy. It just shows you what it truly means to win at Le Mans. So some drivers are lucky enough to win Le Mans multiple times during their career, while some drivers they could race here for 20 straight years and not win Le Mans a single time. So you truly want to savor these moments, because it's definitely one of the hardest races in the world to win, and for this number 50 team to execute the job perfectly and get the job done. That's what it's all about. This is Le Mans, and it's going to be a massive party at Ferrari. The Tifosi, I'm sure all of the Ferrari fans are going to be jumping up and down all throughout the world, and it was going to be interesting to see what Ferrari is able to do for the remainder of this World Endurance Championship season. Like you said, Joe, next year they'll be going for a 3 in a row. We always expect Toyota to be in contention. Well, maybe Toyota's reign at Le Mans could be over, and maybe it's time for Ferrari to go on a similar run. Yeah, but Ferrari ended up taking 2 spots on the podium in this race. But if you're Toyota Gazoo Racing, you have to wonder what could have been. The number 8 Toyota got turned around by the number 51 Ferrari at Mulsanne corner, as the number 7 Toyota suffered 2 punctures late in the race. Jose Maria Lopez replacing the injured Mike Conway in the number 7 Toyota had control of the car in the final stint. Lopez began the stint over 30 seconds behind the race-winning Ferrari, cutting the gap down to 14 seconds at the end, despite the team coming on the radio, telling him that they wanted to focus on preserving second place, thinking big picture about the championship. If it wasn't for those 2 punctures, Joe, do you think we would have been talking about another Toyota Le Mans win? Because 2 punctures, think about all the time they spent in the pit, and Lopez 14 seconds back. He would have definitely been way ahead, right?
Way ahead. Without those punctures, very likely this was sort of the undoing of Toyota's race, getting those punctures and essentially putting them behind the Ferraris. And that's the amazing part of this 24-hour race. You could have a mistake like a punctured tire. Even though it's 24 hours, I think a lot of people, especially casual motorsports fans, are starting to get into endurance racing. They sort of think, well, compare this to a race that's typically 2 to 3 hours where a puncture could pretty much ruin the day. You have 24 hours. You can make up that difference. Not so. Look, they were behind. They just could not get there. At the end of the day, you could talk about safety cars, how they neutralized the field and everything. But the fact that you fell behind, you could not get past them, and then this gap that they had, it really shows no matter the form of motorsport, the length of it, 24 hours, still the smallest mistakes, the smallest on-track issues can cost you at the end of the race. For Toyota, I thought it was interesting. Yeah, I know the idea. Let's think big picture. The championship is on the line. We don't want you to go, because it was getting wet again, we don't want you to go sliding off course, losing valuable points. But I think it shows for the drivers. They knew how close they were to getting this win. They were pushing it. They just knew one hiccup from the Ferrari up ahead, they were all of a sudden going to be on the top set of the podium. So it was really interesting seeing the management team saying, preserve the second place. I think the championship, the drivers, they knew they didn't want to come home second place. They wanted to get this win. They know they were so close. It's just tire punctures, way it goes. You got to be near flawless. Like I said with the 50 and they were just about near flawless, but those 2 punctures essentially ruined their day, and you're going to be thinking about this for a while. 14 seconds behind, something else.
Yeah, 14 seconds may sound like a lot on a traditional track, but Joe, 14 seconds has got to hurt this number 7 Toyota team, because I really believe that this was their undoing in the race. If it wasn't for these 2 punctures, I think we'd be talking about a Toyota victory right now instead of Ferrari going back to back. But Jose Maria Lopez, I know he's been under a lot of criticism throughout his sports car racing career, because he often seems to He always puts the car right on the edge, and sometimes he oversteps and makes a mistake that ends up costing his team. But this final stint, I thought it was very impressive by him, and for Toyota to trust him in the car in this final stint showed how much faith they have in him. And I'm just wondering, if they had this much faith in Jose Maria Lopez, why did they take him out of the number 7 and send him basically to the LMGT3 class if they wanted to have him run this final stint. But all in all, he did the very best that he could given the circumstances. And yeah, I was a little confused over the radio when the team basically told them they wanted to preserve P2, and not really push that hard. And even the announcers were saying on the Eurosport broadcast, they were like, we're racing in wet conditions right now. You could be one corner away from making a mistake and all of that. So if the number 50 Ferrari Nicholas Nielsen had made a mistake, and Jose Maria Lopez, just kept pushing, he could have potentially, made up those 14 seconds and gotten up there, instead of being like, hey, we want you to just take it easy and not push. And then if that mistake was made, and Lopez wasn't pushing, then the Ferrari would have had time to recover from the incident. But all in all, that Toyota, they didn't dominate Le Mans like we've seen in recent years, but they were definitely in the fight, and I think that they were 2 tire punches away from getting another Le Mans win. And unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be this year. And like we say about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway picking the Indy 500 champion each year, it's the same thing here at Circuit de la Sarre. Le Mans picks the winner, and today just wasn't the day for Toyota Gazoo Racing. And now moving on to the LMP2 class, United Autosports won, which shouldn't be a surprise to all of you sports car enthusiasts out there, but it wasn't the car that Matt and I predicted several days ago on Grid Tonight. We said the number 23 car would win, but their chances ended early as Ben Keaton spun and got stuck in the gravel on X. Keaton said a piece of the gravel got stuck between the belt and alternator pulley, which ended up breaking the pulley. And in the end, the other United Autosports car, the number 22, earned a spot on the top step of the podium with Oliver Jarvis, Nolan Siegel, and Bijoy Garge. Focusing more on Nolan Siegel, who got bumped from the Indy 500 field of 33. How about him winning Le Mans weeks after the lowest point of his racing career?
Yeah, to see him smiling on the top set of the podium, that has to feel so, I would say, refreshing, considering he's come off a pretty rough stretch with failing to qualify for the Indianapolis 500, which everyone gives him credit. He did not hold back. He essentially put the car on the wall because he knew he had to go all out to try to get in the Indianapolis 500. He seemed to gain a lot of respect to the drivers, but still, gaining the respect of the drivers, that's one thing. Missing out on the Indianapolis 500 still hurts a lot. Comes in here, puts the car in a good spot, goes out there, gets a win, and he's had a eventful time since the Indianapolis 500. He was in Road America thinking he was going to race the Indy Next Series, gets called up to Hugo's Hollinger Racing, substitute role. He's been everywhere. I think this is the kind of few weeks where it could really make or break a driver. You could be broken, lose your confidence in yourself, start having poor performances, just trying to do things almost like reinventing yourself. Like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Where can I improve myself? I don't think he's doing that. If anything, I'm thinking he's rising up to the occasion. He has proven that he can go out there, short notice, get a good run. But overall, this race put together a great effort to get a class win in the Le Mans 24 hours. This is definitely going to be the highlight of his 2024 season. It's still going to have that sting of you missed the Indy 500, but he has that Le Mans 24-hour trophy. That's going to feel really good, bring a smile to his face.
Yeah, I think Nolan Siegel is going to be just okay in his racing career. And it was amazing what he was able to do today and get the LMP2 class victory. Like you say, Joe, this could be a make or break, type of situation for him after you missed the Indy 500. But at least he was on standby for Aaron McLaren if Kyle Larson, wasn't able to go in that race. So it showed you how highly McLaren thought of him. But I guess you could say he was really the only one available who could have replaced Larson in that race. But all in all, Nolan Siegel has a lot of talent. And I think he's going to have a very bright future in racing. It's definitely been quite a month for him. The lows of the lows, being the only driver to get bumped from the Indy 500 field to the highs of the highs to winning the greatest sports car race in the world and one of the top 3 races in the entire world of any discipline of motorsports. So for him to accomplish this is massive for his racing career. It's going to be a massive confidence booster for him. Especially, you mentioned the last race weekend at Road America replaced Agustin Canapino at Junco's Hollinger Racing. It was nice that Junco's thought very high enough of him to put him in that seat, show you what IndyCar owners are thinking of him. And Siegel was definitely flawless in the 24 Hours of Le Mans too. So all in all, a really good recovery from the lows of Indy, and it'll be interesting to see what he's going to do moving forward. We assume he's going to return to the Indy next series and try to salvage his championship campaign. But after missing that race at Road America, it's going to be hard for him to catch ground on the front runners, with Jacob Abel and company fighting for the championship. And while the rain caused lots of issues for a handful of drivers, one of the scariest incidents of the race took place entering the Indianapolis corner. The number 27 Harder Racing team, Aston Martin, Daniel Mancinelli, went spinning into tire barriers and landed upside down on his roof as a faster prototype approached. And thankfully, Mancinelli climbed out of the car under his own power unharmed. Given how treacherous track conditions were in this race, are you surprised we didn't see more huge shunts like this one?
I was in a way surprised, but at the same time, I said this before, I should have not been surprised. We know when it comes to Le Mans 24 hours, it seems at some point you're going to get rain late at night, in the evening, and then it just goes through. But that wasn't the case. We had it where it started raining a little bit earlier in the race, then it went away, came back, got much harder. I know we'll talk about that a little later. And then towards the end, it came back. When it comes to the drivers, I feel especially with all the work that's put into preparing for this race, the technology of these cars where they had the video cameras for rear view mirrors, you see a lot less errors when it comes to a car being in the wrong place at the wrong time when you have faster approaching vehicle and then somebody get into a hydroplaning situation and losing control, taking out some others. But overall, this race, I think it was good to see that the drivers, they were driving more heads up. They were, in a ways, driving, I think, knowing that, hey, if we have a crash, we could have another long safety car period. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. And really, with this wreck, it was more just a mistake where the Heart of Racing driver, trying to get out of the way of the faster cars coming, just got a little bit into wet stuff, but that was just enough to ruin his day. I know we saw the Penske, I believe the Penske 4 lose control in Indianapolis. Hard hit as well, too. But that was much later on. The fact that I believe it was after the long caution flag, they said they had 11 cars on the lead lap the most. I think I spoke very highly of the drivers, the competition we had, where everybody knew one simple mistake could really undo your race, whether you caused it something mechanical. I gotta say, too, I'm a little bit more surprised we didn't have more mechanical issues after that long caution, too.
Yeah, for sure. And also got to give a good hand to the drivers as well. When they were racing during these conditions, they were spectacular. We didn't see too many incidents, but yeah, I really thought we were going to see, more offs and all of this, but most of them did the best they could to keep it on the road. And that's really all you can ask for in these situations. And speaking of treacherous track conditions, the last part of Racing in Darkness was interrupted by an hours-long safety car period that lasted over 4 hours. At the time, it was raining pretty hard around the track and pitch black outside, minus the car's headlights. Understandably so. We felt running behind the safety car at this point was justified in the name of safety. However, as the sun came up, and everything got lighter outside, the rain slowed down. Many felt frustrated because it got to a point where we were seemingly wasting laps when track conditions were better in racing, but we were still running behind the safety car. Joe, did race control make the right call to run hours behind the safety car, or do you think they could have resumed racing a lot sooner than they did?
It's easiest for us to discuss this. I feel they should have gone racing much sooner. As soon as the daylight was starting to come out and we could see a lot more. But overall, the big thing that sort of, I think, got me more, okay, what are we doing here? We were hearing the commentators talking about they don't throw the red flag here. It has not happened in Le Mans. Is going behind a safety car for 4 hours really the best answer? I know there's a lot of issues if they throw the red flag, particularly when it comes to, all the people that are there, everything going on. It could open a hornet's nest of a mess. But 4 hours behind a safety car, if somebody was tuning in for the first time, this is not exactly a great look. When it comes to, okay, we got daylight, we should be racing again. I know we want safe, ideal conditions. When it comes to racing in the rain, the rooster tails are always a big concern, especially on the Mulsanne Straight. You could be just about blind reaching these top speeds, and if there's trouble entering chicane, there could be some big problems. But we are racing, though. We are motorsports. Any sport, even if it's motorsport 2, you have your element of danger. We could try to mitigate as much as we can. But at what point are we saying, okay, we're taking the race away from the drivers? Because these are the best drivers in endurance racing. We're not talking about amateur drivers just going out first time under wet conditions. We're talking about drivers that have, where they're on the bronze level, the higher up levels. They've been racing around the world, Europe, various conditions. I say let them race. We know they're not going to just push it like it's a dry track. You might have an incident here or there, and I think that was probably race control's main concern. If they allow everyone to start racing and we see a crash occur that could alter the race, you know how the drivers are. They're going to say, it's too early to go back racing. Race control messed this up. We should have not gone racing. Then we had this controversy. Well, no drivers could say that, but now everyone's saying, why were we behind a safety car this long? We're supposed to be racing. This is something I think the AOC has to look into, because if we get rain again, middle of the dark, I don't want fans to be saying, okay, this means we're going to have a 3 or 4 hour safety car once the rain goes away. We don't want to set that precedence.
It was definitely quite something, because I got off work last night at 9 o'clock, and once I finally got set up ready to watch the race, that's when the safety car came out. So I really got to see less than 1 hour of racing last night, which was very, very frustrating. Think about it, people who did get off work like I did on late Saturday night, and we want to come home and spend the rest of our night watching a few hours of Le Mans 24 hours before we go to bed. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. It was a very frustrating for them to be sitting behind the safety car that long. And honestly, I do understand at first. It's very dark outside, especially there at certain sections of the track, and it was really coming down hard. So if we're doing this in the name of safety, at that point, I truly understand. But as the sun came up, like I said, the skies had lightened, the rain had lightened. So I'm like, what are we doing here? Be like, just keep the drivers on the rain tires and let them go around the track and figure it out, and then if there's an accident, that if we can bring out another safety car. But I felt like conditions were good enough for us to go back racing sooner than what they did. But I don't understand why they decided to run behind the safety car this long. I would really like for the race officials to put out a statement about this, and they can explain their reasoning behind this. It just didn't make any sense. I felt like we really wasted a lot of time when we could have been racing. But I'm glad the rain didn't interrupt, the ending of the race. It would have sucked to see this race in behind the safety car. But we saw a lot of great racing and the final hours that kept us on the edge of our seats. So I guess for that, I'm thankful. But yeah, it was a little disappointing, to get off work trying to enjoy my Saturday night in the early Sunday morning and not get to see any racing, just running behind the safety car. But we're going to move on from this situation and look back on something that happened during the first half of the race, when we saw the number 46 Team WRT BMW leading the LMGT3 class with multi-time MotoGP world champion Valentino Rossi behind the wheel. Unfortunately, the race came to an end when Rossi's co-driver Ahmad Al-Harthi lost control of the car under the Dunlop Bridge and hit the wall. This ended the number 46 BMW's race after showing so much speed and potential. Last year, Rossi won the Road to Le Mans support race and had high hopes in his 24 hours of Le Mans debut. How impressed were you by Valentino Rossi's pace in his debut in the 24 hours of Le Mans and his ability to adapt to a completely different type of racing in his post-MotoGP career?
It has been very rewarding to watch Valentino Rossi showing he still has it, trying different disciplines. For fans, especially that have been around since the 90s when Valentino Rossi was getting into MotoGP, we probably all remember the rumors he should look into F1, see where he could do with four wheels. Never exactly materialized, but had a successful, legendary career in MotoGP. The last few years of MotoGP, when he was just trying to get onto the podium again, hopeful maybe for just one more win, it's like what every fan goes through when they see their favorite driver or rider go through this near the end of their career where they're just not getting the results, wishing they could go out with at least one more win. But now seeing Valentino Rossi getting into sports car racing and how impressive he is, he still is showing this true potential he has as a racer out there. This is just phenomenal to see. It was a bummer to see the car go out, but seeing that yellow 46 again, this time now lit up in under the night sky too, it's just really cool to see him on the track. Hopefully, we get to see him again in Le Mans next year because I think that's just one of the big stars internationally that still has a lot of pull to bring out fans to see him out there on the track. And for his racing career too, if he was to somehow get a podium finish in this race, I just think that would be the cherry on the top of what has been a phenomenal career for him, mostly in motorcycles, but now venturing into sports car racing.
Yeah, Valentino Rossi's fan base is extremely strong internationally, regardless where you go. I remember when he was competing in the Bathurst 1000, Valentino Rossi was surrounded by a large flock of fans, and his fans, they're willing to travel wherever he's racing. And whenever he's in an event, the spotlight is always going to be on him. But yeah, I was very impressed by his pace, not in just this race, but in general, since in his post MotoGP career when he's became a BMW factory driver and running all these races in the GT3 car. Rossi is very impressive, very fast. You expect someone coming from motorcycles and switching to sports cars. You don't really expect them, to transition as well as he has, but he looks like someone who's been racing sports cars for 20 years. He doesn't look like someone who's still getting up to speed with this style of racing. He's adapted extremely well, and I think a lot of riders will not be able to do what he's doing right now in this car. Valentino Rossi is in his mid-40s now, not getting any younger, and still in his mid-40s to be having this type of pace, but still getting some more experience in this car. Extremely impressive. I'm very impressed with what he's doing, and like you said, Joe, I hope he's able to come back and run this race next year and hopefully get the finish that he deserved. But if things continue to go well for him and Rossi's pace continues to improve, maybe BMW will put him in the hypercar class next year. I think it would be really cool to see Valentino Rossi going for the overall win at Le Mans, not just a class win. And I believe he's supposed to test the BMW prototype at some point later in the season. I believe that was announced, and BMW was announcing his 2024 racing plans for this year. So it will be very exciting to see what Rossi could do in a prototype at Circuit de la Sarre. Joe, I would like to know, what are your thoughts on that? Would you like to see Rossi go for the overall win at Le Mans?
Oh yeah, everybody would. I mean, this would be a huge reason to watch it. Just like anytime you have a major superstar making a crossover. I know earlier Indianapolis 500, we had a driver do the double, brought in a lot of folks. The Valentino Rossi fans, they thought that, hey, Rossi could win the Le Mans 24 hours overall. He'll have to go through Toyota. He'll have to go through Ferrari. What a story that would be if he was to get it. Podium finish would just be huge. So, yeah, if that could all work out with Rossi, BMW, man, 2025, the 93rd 24-hour Le Mans will be off the hook.
Yeah, for sure. And Valentino Rossi is now he's now competed in the Bathurst 12-hour. That's what I meant earlier, not the Bathurst 1000. Got Supercars on the brand, but luckily Supercars is coming up in just a minute. Yeah, Bathurst 12-hour, the 24 hours of Le Mans, the 24 hours of Spa. Valentino's going to compete in some amazing races in the world, and in the future, I would really like to see him come over to America and run in the Rolex 24 at Daytona so he can check another iconic sports car race off his bucket list. And we've talked about Valentino, and now let's show some love to the actual LMGT3 class winners. The number 91 Manthey EMA Porsche, Richard Lees, Maurice Schur, and Yasir Shaheen ended up winning by a lap over the number 31 Team WRT BMW. Both Manthey Porsches were up front throughout the race as the 911 GT3Rs had the pace to get the job done, with one Manthey Porsche and a Team WRT BMW taking the top 2 spots. The number 88 Proton competition Ford Mustang GT3 took the final spot on the LMGT3 podium. Joe, what do you think of the first LMGT3 race at Le Mans? How good is it for Ford to get a podium at Le Mans after a difficult start to the Mustang GT3's life cycle?
Yeah, considering the rough start they had, a podium, that has to be a feel-good story for the Ford folks. Say, hey, we got a podium. This is one of the hardest races to do that. This is a big pound back to everyone on the team. Let's get ready for the next race because we could do better. We know we could get a podium finish. We just did that at 24 hours. When it comes to these 6-hour races, 8-hour races, various length races, endurance racing, they know they could get it done. It builds that confidence for the Ford team. And the LMGT 3 racing overall, I thought was pretty good. We saw how even, I know I was following for the Women Motorsports Pro and the Iron Dames progress. They had an up and down day. But overall, I felt a lot of teams, they had essentially an up and down day. There was very few teams where they just had everything perfectly, everything working out. So it was very competitive. And I'm just looking forward to seeing more out of this class.
Yeah, and I believe at one point the Iron Dames got knocked off the track by a prototype. Is that correct,
Yes.
Joe? Hell yeah. Yeah, definitely an up and down day for them, as you mentioned, up and down day for a lot of teams. But in LMGT3's debut at Le Mans, I thought it went reasonably well. Would have been nice to see more of the battles, but obviously the hypercar class is what pays the bills at the end of the day, so they're gonna definitely get prioritized in their coverage. But all in all, I thought we saw a very competitive race in LMGT3, and looking forward to how this is going to look next year. I still miss the LMGTE cars. Those cars were extremely impressive around this track, but like all good things, it must come to an end. It just didn't make any sense to keep running those cars anymore with costs rising and car counts dwindling. So LMGT3 is what we came up with, and I thought it had a very good debut race in multiple manufacturers in contention throughout the day. And for Ford to get a podium, I know it's not the win, but if I'm the Blue Ovals, I would take this as a huge win because it's been an extremely difficult season in their return to international sports car racing. We've seen in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, Ford has been absolutely nowhere all year long. That car is struggling a lot for pace. It's not very quick in IMSA competition, and it has a lot of reliability issues. I believe at one point during the race, we saw some of the same reliability issues impacting one of the Fords, with the rear wing and the back end just flapping along. And we saw that at the Rolex 24, and I'm thinking it's June now. How come Ford hasn't figured out that problem with the rear of the car? And it's just been a trying year in the World Endurance Championship as well for Ford. So to finally get this podium, I think this really feels like a breakthrough for them. They can use the momentum, take what they learned from this race, apply it to both the WEC and the IMSA program, and see what they can do in the second half of the season. Because we have the Sailing 6 Hours of the Glen coming up in a few weeks, and we're going to see the Fords back in action there. And then the next round for the World Endurance Championship is going to be in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how everything goes for the Fords in endurance racing. Of course, we'll be following that, especially with the World Endurance Performance Index. That'll be updated on Wednesday by Matt White. Let's switch over to another series where Ford is not exactly having the greatest of seasons either, the Repco Supercars Series. One of the big things, of course, for the Repco Supercars Series, we have Broc Feeney. He's in a Chevrolet. He's trying to chase down his teammate in the standings, Will Brown. Well, this was the perfect weekend for him. The Darwin Triple Crown. Broc Feeney won race 1 yesterday, and guess what? Race 2, he took the pole. He led from the start, had a really great start ahead of Brody Kosecki, who was outside of row 1, to the point where Will Brown, who was in the second row, got around to take second place. James Golding, who was the pole sitter for race 1, was in the second row in the 4th position. But Broc Feeney, nobody could catch him. He got the win. Great start. That was a big key difference. Pit stops, pretty straightforward, and overall, just really no competition for him. Will Brown, second place. That was a big, best he could do really this weekend. And he held on to make it where for Triple Eight racing, top 2 positions in the weekend. Stunning display of skill by Broc Feeney, who swept the weekend. It's really weird, Kobe. The Triple Crown was only 2 races. We know with this new format for the Supercar Series, we didn't have the 3 races like last year, but still, Broc Feeney, 2 years in a row, he is the Darwin Triple Crown winner. I have to ask you, could this be the turning point for Broc to apply more pressure to his teammate Will Brown for the championship?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We only had 2 races this weekend, and they're calling it the Triple Crown. If you don't have 3 races, is it really a Triple Crown? So I guess we'll just call it the Darwin Double, because that's exactly what it was. And we know Broc Feeney, his nickname is Mr. Sunday, but this weekend, Mr. Sunday, he became the weekend because he was absolutely dominant this weekend. And in a class of his own, Broc Feeney, it seems like that he's really starting to cook now and get that momentum that he's needing to take the fight to his teammate Will Brown in the championship. I think this is shaping up to be an incredible championship battle between the Red Bull Ampol Triple Eight race and teammates Will Brown and Broc Feeney moving forward, because let's be fair, it's just a 2-horse race for this championship right now between Feeney and Brown, because everyone else is just playing catch up, and these two are in completely a league of their own. And lately it seems like Will Brown is cooling off a little bit. He's still very strong and consistent, but Broc Feeney seems to have taken a step ahead of his teammate right now, and I believe that sweeping the weekend is definitely going to be a turning point for Broc in this championship. And Will Brown, he's going to have to step up his game, because Broc Feeney's coming for him.
Coming for him. First time in his career he has gone back-to-back when it comes to wins. Brody Kosecki, first podium of the year. And this year has been essentially a year of recovery after missing their first handful of races. Race 1, didn't get to start, just bad luck. But now, top 10 finish, check. Podium finish, check. Can Brody Emers get another check mark and contend for a win this year?
Yeah, I think we have enough races under our belts to safely say that Erebus Motorsport is not the same team from last year. Last year, they had an extremely fast car and were one of the contenders week in and week out. And it seems like this year, given all the turmoil that's happened off the track, then all the sponsorships, and then not knowing if Brody was going to be able to race this year or even drive for this team again, this entire organization has taken a huge step back. They're definitely not the same team that they were. But for Kostecki and Erebus to get a podium in race 2 at Darwin, I think this definitely has to feel like a huge win to them. And to be honest, based on what we've seen from them so far, I didn't think that they even be in contention for a podium finish this year. And I'm sure they probably didn't either. And then, you mentioned Brody not starting race 1 either. And I'm sure that was very demoralizing for him, and to come out and get a strong result. I think this is only going to build confidence for him and the team moving forward, and shows that maybe, just maybe, they just keep working on things. Maybe they can sneak out a win at the end of the year, because they just really seem completely off this year.
Yeah, they just seem really off this year, not where they were last year. If they get a win, I think they have to say, hey, we got a win. This is a good step, proving we're going the right direction. Keep rebuilding for 2025. Now, there was 2 bizarre moments in this race. Lap 1, Andre Humgarner and the wildcard entry, Cooper Murray, they collided. The tires interlocking. We saw this in race 1 as well, too, over at essentially the hairpin area for Murray's car. It went on top of Heimgarner's car. This was a really... Visually, it looked scary, but of course, both drivers were able to continue on with the race. That brought out the caution for lap 1, and this brought out the second bizarre incident. Lap 4, all the drivers are coming around the final corner to the long front stretch at Darwin, and it seemed like everyone was caught by surprise when the green flag came out. The pace car went into pit road, caution lights went out, and we saw several cars nearly collide in the back of the pack, some taking evasive actions. And then race control. Hey, you got out of line. Several drivers getting penalties. Overall, and curious to hear what everyone in the chat room has to say about this as well, too. It just seemed like race control, I don't know what was going on. They just seemed to mishandle the way this all went down, where the drivers, from the lead driver to the very back, all of a sudden is, hey, we're going green again. I don't know what occurred, but this is something where definitely it was one of the big moments of the second race, because at the end of the day, with the penalties, that affected a couple drivers' races. Their races were essentially over from getting in a solid position to being back towards the back, because the rest of the race a pretty much straightforward, caution-free, and Broc Feeney leading the way. These two race formats, sometimes it just feels like, okay, everyone's going to have one pit stop. It's almost that start is so critical. If you have more cautions, that could spice things up. But if it's caution-free, unless you have a really lousy pit stop or high tire drop-off, you can almost see how the race is going to play out to the very end. And of course, the next race weekend for the Repco Supercar Series is the NTI Townsville 500, July 5th through the 7th. We're going to be looking at Broc Feeney if he could sweep again. For everyone that had been following our grid bracket challenge, the final round was Will Brown versus Broc Feeney. Broc Feeney swept the weekend, so he is the grid bracket challenge inaugural champion. Tonight, we still have the NASCAR Cup Series. If your Denny Hamlin bracket is not busted, well, have fun with that. Will be interesting to see because we know a lot got busted this past 2 weekends. Kobe, let's stop talking about busted brackets, whether it's the grid or Denny's. Let's get into our shining moments.
Yeah, time for our great one shining moment from this racing weekend. We had 2 racing series to choose from up until this point, whether it was the FI World Endurance Championships 24 Hours of Le Mans or the Darwin, not so Triple Crown, but more like Darwin Double. So let us know down in the chat below what stood out to you most from this racing weekend. And Joe, I'm going to start with you.
For me, my shining moment, 24 Hours of Le Mans, and it has to be Nolan Siegel, class winner for LMP2. This is a driver where he became a household name to a lot of folks in the United States in motorsports when he failed to qualify for the Indianapolis 500, the only driver to fail to qualify. And he went out in spectacular fashion. That first lap, he knew he had to really push hard. He did, got into the wall, car destroyed. It was done. But he gained a lot of respect from the drivers. We saw on social media, from Graham Rahal going up to talk to him, who of course failed to qualify the year before. Since then, it just seems like what could have been a downward spiral has turned into sort of a wild journey, but he's making the best of it. He is getting himself in a position to win races, and he did that at Le Mans 24 Hours. He substituted for Canapino at Road America. He has the attention of a lot of people, and if he keeps putting together smart races, regardless of the equipment, like Hunko's Hollinger, you give him United Autosport, look what he did. A smart race. I think he could really show that he's going to rebound from what happened at Indianapolis. Nolan Siegel, my shining moment.
Yeah, that's a really great shining moment. I think Graham Rahal would agree with you because Graham Rahal said after the Indy 500, this kid is good. This guy's future is IndyCar. He's going to be perfectly fine. I think Nolan has already proven that he's going to be fine because, United Autosports is not just one of the top teams in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, LMP2. They're one of the top LMP2 teams in the world, and see what he can do in good equipment. I'm sure there are a lot of car owners out there, whether it's sports cars or Indy cars. They're definitely going to keep Nolan Siegel towards the top of their list as we get into the silly season conversation in 2025 and beyond. But my one shot, I got to give it to Ferrari, winning back-to-back Le Mans in the last 2 years. And I remember last year's 24-hour Le Mans, it was like a huge relief for Ferrari to win that race because we know Ferrari mostly focuses on the Formula One side of things, and that hasn't exactly gone well in recent years. A lot of disappointments, a lot of frustration, wondering when is Ferrari going to get back to being the kings of the world that they used to be. And last year, Ferrari getting that win, I remember so much relief. And this year, lots of celebrations, lots of tears flowing for Ferrari. It seems like Ferrari is on the up and up now, whether it's Formula One or sports car racing. This 499P Hypercar, it seems like that they truly have this Circuit de la Sarre figured out, and if they continue to stick around for the years ahead, I think they could potentially go on a run and win even more than 24 Hours of Le Mans in a row. I think next year, they could potentially go for the three-peat and see what happens after that. It's just a great time right now to be a Ferrari fan if that's the team that you support, because lots of momentum on the sports car side of things. And in Formula One, you got Lewis Hamilton coming over next year, so you're gonna see Hamilton and Leclerc. And Ferrari is very optimistic about their 2025 car coming up, and also the 2026 regulation as well. Brand new slate for all the teams. So I think Ferrari is slowly turning the tide of all the lows that they've experienced in recent years, and maybe Ferrari can finally get back on top in all forms of racing.
You gotta be happy if you're a Ferrari fan waking up, or if you've been up, you're gonna be feeling really good today. From the chat room, Adam, one shine moment. Father's Day to all the dads in the motorsports world across the world. Of course, United States Father's Day this weekend. So definitely encourage everyone. Be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, because as you may have noticed, we did not cover the NASCAR Cup Series. That's because they're racing much later tonight. Ben on Grid Encore will be recapping that race, so hit the bell icon so you don't miss Grid Encore tomorrow, the NASCAR Cup Series recap race. Also, be sure to visit gridranking.com for Matthew Bros NASCAR recap as well too. And a big thank you to our Patreon investors for helping us stay on the air, helping us keep the website up and running, and helping us grow our audience right here on YouTube. You too can invest in us. New investors get their name or gold, or you up your plan to the next tier, you get your name up and gold and a shout out from us right here on the air. For Kobe Lambeth, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.